What if a great civilization, advanced beyond our imagination, simply vanished? This is the core of the Atlantis legend. It's a story that has captivated thinkers, explorers, and dreamers for centuries. The idea of a lost paradise swallowed by the sea is a powerful one. It speaks to our deepest questions about the past. Could such a place have truly existed? For many, Atlantis is not just a myth. It is a mystery waiting to be solved. A puzzle scattered across ancient texts and whispered legends. The search for this lost kingdom is a search for a missing chapter of human history. The name Atlantis conjures images of a magnificent island nation. It was said to be a marvel of engineering and wisdom. Its people possessed knowledge that surpassed even our modern achievements. They built incredible cities and commanded powerful technologies. But in a single catastrophic day and night, it was all lost. The ocean claimed the island, and its story faded into legend. This tale of sudden destruction has served as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the power of nature and the fragility of even the greatest civilizations. It's a story that has refused to die, echoing through time. For more than 2,000 years after it was first described, the world was largely silent on Atlantis. The story was preserved, but few took it as more than a philosophical fable. Then, in the modern era, something changed. Curiosity was reignited. Scholars, adventurers, and scientists began to look at the old story with new eyes. They wondered if there was a kernel of truth hidden within the myth. This renewed interest sparked countless expeditions and theories. It turned a forgotten legend into one of history's most compelling unsolved mysteries. The quest for Atlantis was on. This journey takes us from ancient philosophy to modern archaeology. We will explore incredible claims and bizarre discoveries, from mysterious engraved stones in Peru to sunken ruins near the Bahamas. The evidence is scattered, controversial, and always fascinating. We will examine the theories of researchers like Robert Cohen, who see connections in global myths. And we will consider the possibility that survivors of this lost world seeded other great ancient cultures. The story of Atlantis is more than just a legend, it is a global investigation into our own origins. Every great mystery has an origin story. For Atlantis, that story comes from one source. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato. Around 360 BC, he wrote two dialogues, the Timaeus and the Critias. In these texts, he introduced the world to the island of Atlantis. He described it as a formidable naval power located beyond the Pillars of Hercules. These pillars are what we now know as the Strait of Gibraltar. According to Plato, this great kingdom existed 9,000 years before his own time. It was a story he claimed was passed down through his family, originating from the wise Athenian statesman, Solon. Plato's account is incredibly detailed. He describes Atlantis as an island larger than Libya and Asia combined. It was the heart of a powerful empire that ruled over other islands and parts of the continents. The capital city was a marvel of concentric rings of land and water. At its center stood a magnificent temple dedicated to Poseidon, the god of the sea. The island was rich in natural resources, including a mysterious metal called orichalcum. This metal, he wrote, was second in value only to gold. The Atlanteans were a noble and virtuous people for many generations, but as the story goes, their divine nature weakened. Greed and ambition began to corrupt their society. The Atlanteans launched an aggressive campaign to conquer the known world. They successfully subdued parts of Europe and Africa. However, when they tried to conquer Athens, they were defeated by the city's brave warriors. This act of hubris, or arrogant pride, angered the gods. They decided to punish the Atlantean civilization for its moral decay. The consequences were swift and devastating. It was a lesson in the dangers of power and corruption. In a single terrible day and night, the end came. Violent earthquakes and catastrophic floods racked the island. The mighty kingdom of Atlantis with all its people and wonders was swallowed by the sea. It disappeared beneath the waves, never to be seen again. Plato concludes his tale by noting that the sunken island created an impassable shoal of mud. This made the area of the Atlantic Ocean impossible to navigate. And so the legend was born. A story of a lost world, a cautionary tale, and an enduring mystery that continues to challenge us today. After Plato, the story of Atlantis fell into a long, deep silence for over 2 millennia. It was a philosopher's tale, a footnote in history, but little more. The modern era, however, brought a reawakening of curiosity. Researchers like Robert Cohen began to piece together scattered clues, suggesting the myth was more than just a fable. Cohen's work synthesizes various theories pointing to a fascinating possibility. An ancient Peruvian legend speaks of wise Atlantean sages who lived 14,000 years ago. They foresaw a great cataclysm that would destroy their civilization. To preserve their knowledge, they decided to engrave it onto stone, the one material they believed could withstand the ravages of time and disaster. These sages didn't hide their stone records in one place, instead they scattered them across the globe. The plan was to ensure that some part of their legacy would survive no matter what happened. These inscribed stones were reportedly distributed from South America to distant lands like Egypt, India, and Tibet. This ancient strategy bears a striking resemblance to modern ideas, like NASA's golden record sent into space. Both projects share the same fundamental goal: to create a time capsule of a civilization's essence for future generations to find. The idea that a prehistoric culture would devise such a sophisticated plan for preserving its knowledge is truly staggering. The first major modern discovery linked to this legend happened in the early 20th century. Colonel James Churchward, a British officer, claimed to have found a set of ancient tablets in an Indian temple. According to Churchward, these stones told the story of the creation of the world from the perspective of a lost civilization he called Mu, which many equate with Atlantis. Decades later, another incredible find surfaced. In the 1960s, a massive deposit of engraved stones was unearthed in Acambro, Mexico. These discoveries, though controversial, fueled the growing belief that physical evidence of a lost, advanced civilization might actually exist, waiting to be rediscovered and understood by the modern world. These finds were just the beginning. They set the stage for one of the most intriguing and debated archaeological mysteries of our time. In Ica, Peru, a local physician named Dr. Javier Cabrera began to assemble a collection of similar artifacts. Dr. Cabrera, a descendant of the city's founder, dedicated his life to studying these stones. He believed they were the remnants of the stone library mentioned in the old legends. His work would eventually bring the story of Atlantis out of the realm of pure myth and into the world of tangible physical evidence, challenging everything we thought we knew about the deep past. Dr. Javier Cabrera's collection began small but grew into something monumental. He eventually amassed over 11,000 engraved stones, creating a private museum to house them. These stones, known as glyptoliths, are a type of andesite, a hard volcanic rock. They vary in color from dark gray to a pale ochre. What makes them so remarkable are the engravings etched onto their surfaces. The lines are drawn with extraordinary precision that seems difficult to achieve with primitive tools. Each stone is covered with a thick, dark patina, a natural layer of oxidation that forms over a very long time. This patina suggested the engravings were ancient, not modern forgeries. Dr. Cabrera called his collection the Stone Book. He claimed it was a comprehensive library detailing the history and knowledge of a forgotten civilization. He was secretive about the exact location where the stones were found, saying only that a massive cache of nearly 100,000 stones existed in a hidden cave. While this secrecy fueled skepticism, the stones had been known in the region since the 17th century. Their sheer abundance had made them seem unremarkable to the local population. It was Dr. Cabrera who first recognized their potential significance, seeing them not as curiosities, but as a deliberate record left by a highly advanced ancient culture. The scenes depicted on the stones are what make them so controversial. They range from mundane images of daily life to scenes that seem to belong in science fiction. Because of this, many scholars immediately questioned their authenticity. To settle the debate, an expert analysis was conducted. The mineralogist Mauricio Hochschild was brought in to examine the artifacts. His findings were stunning. He concluded that the natural oxidation layer covered both the surface of the stones and the grooves of the engravings equally. This indicated the carvings were not recent additions. He estimated their age at several tens of centuries, though he couldn't provide a more precise date. Dr. Cabrera was not alone in his belief. The director of Peru's Astronautics Museum also acquired over 400 of these stones for his own collection. He too was convinced of their ancient origins, stating, "These stones have been engraved for several millennia." The physical evidence seemed to suggest the stones were genuinely old, yet the images they contained told a story so radical, so completely at odds with the accepted timeline of human history, that the academic world struggled to accept them. The Stone Book of Ica presented a profound challenge. Either our understanding of the past was wrong, or the stones were part of an elaborate, centuries-old hoax. The engravings on the Isa stones, or glyptoliths, offer a glimpse into a world that is both familiar and utterly alien. Many stones depict scenes of advanced medical procedures, One series of 20 stones illustrates a complete heart transplant. The process begins with blood being drawn from a pregnant woman. Modern science has confirmed that the blood of pregnant women contains hormones that can help prevent organ rejection. The patient in the engravings appears to be under anesthesia, receiving some kind of liquid and oxygen through tubes. Even the diseased heart is shown in detail, with clear depictions of lesions and hardened arteries. Other stones show kidney transplants and even brain surgery. This portrayal of advanced medicine is not the only startling imagery. Other stones seem to show a deep understanding of astronomy. People are depicted looking at the sky through devices that look exactly like telescopes. One particular artifact, the astronomer's stone, appears to tell the story of a comet. It shows the comet's approach and the resulting devastation on Earth, with continents being submerged by massive floods. A single boat is shown floating on a vast ocean carrying 3 survivors. This narrative strongly echoes the biblical story of Noah's Ark and global flood myths found in cultures worldwide. It suggests the Atlantean cataclysm may have been a real event caused by a cosmic impact. Perhaps the most famous and perplexing images are those that show humans alongside dinosaurs. In several engravings, human-like figures are shown interacting with creatures that are unmistakably identifiable as Triceratops, Stegosaurus, and even Tyrannosaurus rex. One stone shows a strange humanoid primate with a long, flat tail standing next to a dinosaur. This raises incredible questions. Does this depict the missing link in human evolution? Or does it represent a creature from mythology, like the Babylonian fish god, Oannes, who was said to have brought civilization to humanity? The coexistence of humans and dinosaurs directly contradicts everything we know about prehistory. These stones force us to reconsider the limits of ancient knowledge. The presence of a telescope is not entirely without precedent. The Chinese philosopher Confucius wrote that the Emperor Yao, who died in 2258 BC, observed the heavens through a tube. Dr. Derek Price of Cambridge University, famous for identifying the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek astronomical computer, took the Ica stones seriously. He called Dr. Cabrera a man worthy of all esteem and trust and urged for more research. The stones present a message from a lost world, one that possessed scientific knowledge far beyond its time. They challenge us to ask whether our history is truly what we think it is. What should truly make us pause and consider the possibility of Atlantis is not a single story, but a global chorus of them. Across continents and cultures, separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, we find the same fundamental narrative. It is the story of a great and evolved civilization that existed in a distant past. This civilization achieved incredible things, mastering arts and sciences that we are only now beginning to rediscover. And then, in a moment of terrible fury, it was wiped from the face of the earth by a geological cataclysm. This convergence of myths is too powerful and too persistent to be dismissed as mere coincidence. It suggests a shared memory, a scar left on the collective consciousness of humanity. If we are to believe the custodians of the Ica stones, such as Dr. Cabrera, the most profound secrets are yet to be revealed. He hinted that certain stones, not yet shown to the public, contain revelations that are too shocking for our current understanding. They supposedly detail discoveries and technologies so advanced, and secrets so potentially frightening, that humanity is not yet ready for them. This idea of hidden knowledge, preserved by a select few, is a recurring theme in these legends. It paints a picture of a civilization that was not just lost to the sea, but one whose most powerful secrets were deliberately concealed, waiting for a future time when they could be safely understood. This narrative of a lost Western kingdom is not unique to a single culture. Inca and Mayan legends from the heart of the Americas speak in nearly identical terms about this very event. They tell of a powerful and sovereign kingdom to the west that was one day covered by the waves and lost to the depths of the ocean. The stories are specific, often linking the catastrophe to a celestial event. They describe the fall of the star as the trigger for this world-altering disaster. The consistency of these accounts, from two of the most advanced civilizations of the ancient Americas, gives significant weight to the idea that they are remembering a real historical event. Thousands of miles away, on the other side of the world, we find the same story again. On the banks of the Nile, an Egyptian papyrus from the 12th dynasty tells a chillingly similar tale. The text, preserved in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, describes the fall of a star from the heavens. It speaks of flames engulfing the land and a cataclysm that wiped out everyone, save for a single survivor who lived to tell the tale. The parallels are undeniable. From Peru to Egypt, the ancient world seems to be crying out with one voice, telling us of a great civilization destroyed by a star that fell from the sky. The story of the cataclysm is not just a vague folk memory, many accounts share specific, verifiable details. The Egyptian papyrus, often called the Tale of the Shipwrecked Sailor, gives a first-hand account of the terror. The survivor recounts, "A star fell from the sky and flames consumed everything, everyone perished, and I alone escaped with my life." This ancient document isn't an isolated piece of evidence. Mexican oral traditions, passed down through generations, speak of a great flood during which 6 stars fell from the sky. This detail of multiple impacts or fragments is fascinating, suggesting a complex astronomical event, perhaps a comet breaking apart as it entered the atmosphere, leading to widespread devastation on a global scale. The Ica stones provide a visual counterpart to these written and oral histories. 2 of the glyptoliths depict what appears to be a geographical map of the world during the Secondary Era. On this map, 4 continents are shown surrounded by a vast ocean. One of these landmasses, located in the Atlantic, is shown with an area roughly the size of modern Australia. Most incredibly, the stones even appear to have navigation routes drawn on them, connecting this lost continent to the others. This suggests not only the existence of Atlantis, but also its role as a hub of a global maritime network, a center of trade and travel for the ancient world. This idea of a shared global catastrophe is reinforced by tribes who seem to have a direct ancestral link to the story. In a remote village named Atlan, a tribe of fair-skinned indigenous people known as the Pariah preserve a unique tradition. Their oral history speaks of their ancestors coming from a big island in the east. This island, once their homeland, was submerged in the ocean's waters following a terrible cataclysm. The name of their village, Atlan, is itself a startling echo of Atlantis. It is as if they are the living remnants of a lost world, carrying the memory of their origins in their name and their stories. The convergence of these myths from Egypt, Mexico, and the Pariah people of South America points to a single unifying event. Each culture describes a mighty kingdom, a celestial trigger, and a devastating flood that wiped it all away. It has led numerous researchers to a daring but logical conclusion. They theorize that the great civilizations we know from antiquity, the Egyptians, the Mayans, and the Incas, were not spontaneous developments. Instead, they were the inheritors of Atlantean knowledge, founded by the scattered survivors of the Great Cataclysm, who sought refuge on new shores and attempted to rebuild their lost world. So, the theory that the Egyptians, Mayans, and Incas are the direct descendants of Atlantean survivors is not, just a fringe idea. Actually, it's been supported by a number of respected scholars from around the world. Scientists like Nikolai Girov from Russia, Professor Andrew Thomas from the United States, and the German archaeologist Leo Frobenius have all explored this hypothesis in depth. They argue that the sudden and sophisticated rise of these cultures just can't be explained by conventional models of development. Instead, they propose that these civilizations were founded by refugees from a much older, more advanced society. These survivors, they brought with them a wealth of knowledge in architecture, astronomy, and spirituality. A vast body of evidence, from archaeological finds to ritual practices, really seems to support this thesis of a common Atlantean ancestry. The similarities in writing systems are particularly striking. The researcher Auguste Leplongeon identified 13 Mayan symbols that are absolutely identical to hieroglyphs used by the ancient Egyptians. In Paraguay, Dr. Bertoni noted that the Guarani people used a writing system with clear parallels to Egyptian script. Furthermore, A. Bragin pointed out numerous resemblances between Egyptian hieroglyphs and symbols found deep in the rainforests of Brazil. These linguistic connections across vast disconnected geographies are difficult to explain without a common origin point. The conceptual similarities are just as astonishing. The religious, astronomical, and architectural principles found in Egyptian, Sumerian, Toltec, Inca, and Mayan civilizations all share a common blueprint. Bragin argued that this makes the hypothesis of the American Atlantean origin of the Egyptian civilization extremely plausible. His theories have been honestly remarkably confirmed by later archaeological discoveries. For instance, the same sacred creature, the scarab beetle, is a prominent symbol in both Egyptian and Mayan art. It can be seen carved into the pediment of a Mayan temple just as it is painted on the walls of an Egyptian tomb, a shared symbol of rebirth and cosmic cycles. perhaps the most profound connection lies in their spiritual beliefs. A famous document known as the Papyrus of Anana from the 14th century BC reveals an Egyptian metaphysical framework that is nearly identical to Amerindian beliefs. The papyrus reads, "Men do not live only once to disappear forever. They live several lives in different places. Between one kind of life and another, there is a dark, impenetrable veil." This core belief in reincarnation and the soul's journey through multiple lives is a cornerstone of both Egyptian and ancient American spirituality. It suggests a shared philosophical heritage, a common understanding of life, death, and the cosmos that could only have come from a single, highly advanced parent culture. The idea that the great ancient civilizations of Egypt and the Americas did not develop in isolation is, honestly, a powerful one. It suggests they were all heirs to a single, lost parent culture. Scientists of indisputable renown such as Nikolai Gyrov of Russia and Professor Andrew Thomas of the United States have championed this very thesis. They argue that the Egyptians, Mayans, and Incas are the last survivors of the Atlantean people. This is not mere speculation. It's a conclusion drawn from a wealth of archaeological, artistic, and ritualistic evidence. The similarities are simply too numerous and too specific to be dismissed as coincidence. They point to a shared blueprint, a common inheritance of knowledge passed down from a forgotten age. The most compelling evidence lies in the striking similarity of their writing systems. The researcher Auguste Le Plongeon, a pioneer in Mayan studies, cited 13 distinct Mayan signs that were absolutely identical to those used by the ancient Egyptians. This is, honestly, a stunning connection, linking two cultures separated by the vast Atlantic Ocean. The parallels do not stop there. Dr. Bertoni, working in South America, noted that the Guarani people of Paraguay had a writing system that shared the same foundational structure as that of the Egyptians. In 1952, researcher A. Braguin highlighted numerous similarities between Egyptian hieroglyphs and cryptic symbols discovered deep within the virgin forests of Mato Grosso, Brazil, further strengthening this linguistic link across the continents. Beyond language, the religious, astronomical, and architectural concepts found in these cultures are astonishingly similar. The Egyptian, Sumerian, Toltec, Inca, and Mayan civilizations all seem to have built their societies upon a common set of principles. Braguin argued that this overwhelming evidence makes the hypothesis of an American Atlantean origin of the Egyptian civilization extremely plausible. Decades after he proposed this, modern archaeology continues to unearth confirmations. A simple but profound example is the sacred scarab beetle. This creature, a symbol of creation and rebirth, is frequently represented on the pediment of Mayan temples in Central America, just as it is ubiquitously painted on the frescoes of Egyptian tombs. This shared heritage is perhaps most deeply felt in their spiritual and metaphysical beliefs. A famous document, the Papyrus of Anana, written by the chief scribe of Pharaoh Seti II in the 14th century BC, outlines a view of the soul that is almost identical to Amerindian beliefs. It reads, "Read, you who will discover this scroll in future times. Men do not live only once to disappear forever. They live several lives in different places. In the end, all these past lives will be revealed to you." This core belief in reincarnation, the soul's journey, and the eventual awakening to past lives forms the spiritual bedrock of these seemingly disconnected cultures, hinting at a single ancient source of wisdom. The shared spirituality and knowledge between these cultures manifested in their physical creations. According to the abbot Moreau, this common worldview resulted in Amerindian art objects resembling their Egyptian counterparts down to the most minute details. The statue of the goddess Xochipilli, housed in the National Museum of Mexico, possesses a style that is authentically Egyptian in its form and posture. In Ecuador, the Franco collection in Quito contains statuettes that exhibit classic Egyptian features, from the specific style of the hairstyle and ceremonial beard, to the design of the garments and the pectoral ornaments worn by the priests. These are not vague resemblances, they are precise artistic and cultural echoes. This pattern continues in some of the most iconic artifacts from the ancient Americas. The famous statue known as the Bearded Man, discovered at the enigmatic site of Tiahuanaco in Bolivia, presents details that are typically Egyptian. The style of the beard and the figure's noble bearing are strongly reminiscent of pharaonic portraiture. The motivation behind the treasures found in their burial chambers is also identical. Both the Egyptians and the Incas buried their elite with precious objects, tools, and provisions, believing these items were necessary for the soul's journey in the afterlife. This shared, complex funerary tradition suggests a common understanding of what lies beyond death, a philosophy inherited from a single source. An old Egyptian legend, relayed by the great Arab chronicler al-Masudi in the 10th century, adds another layer to this mystery. In his work, The Golden Meadows, he recounts a story told by the chief of the scribes. This astonishing treasure was brought to Egypt long ago by the ancestors of our illustrious ancestors, who had come from the other side of the sea. The legend speaks of wonders of the highest science, including astonishing tools and miracles that allowed man to measure time, predict the future, fly through the air, and move underwater. This account of advanced technology brought from a land across the sea aligns perfectly with the idea of Atlantean survivors arriving in Egypt. Al-Masudi also mentions a curious artifact taken from one of the chambers of the Great Pyramid during the reign of Ahmed ben Tulun. It was a glass cup that had a bizarre property. It weighed the same whether it was empty or full. This account of an object that seems to defy the laws of physics echoes the descriptions of astonishing tools and miracles from the legend. It suggests that the pyramids were not just tombs, but repositories for a forgotten science. The stories and the artifacts together paint a picture of a legacy of incredibly advanced knowledge, carefully preserved by the descendants of those who came from the other side of the sea. The impressive similarity between the Amerindian and Egyptian civilizations is no longer a surprise to those who have studied the evidence. Its testimony is carved in stone across the world. We see it in the ruins of Palenque and the palaces of Mitla, and in the great pyramids of Xochicalco, Teotihuacan, and Cihuatan. The same architectural genius is evident in the ornaments of the Temple of the Sun in Cusco and the monolithic portal of the Cyclopean Temple of Tiahuanaco. English archaeologist H.S. Bellamy expressed the profound bewilderment shared by many historians. He noted the massive discrepancy between the vast knowledge possessed by the Inca and Egyptian peoples and the precarious primitive tools they supposedly had at their disposal. This same sense of awe and confusion is shared by the historian Alexandra Kazantsev. He points out that thousands of years before Copernicus or Galileo, the Egyptians knew that the Earth was a globe that rotated around the sun. Their priests, the guardians of science, had deduced that the universe was infinite and populated by many other worlds. They even understood the elliptical orbit of the Earth. Yet, according to mainstream history, they achieved all of this without a single advanced observation instrument. This paradox leads Kazantsev to a logical, if radical, conclusion. These achievements are the last visible testimony of the Atlanteans, concerned with the highest degree of science. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as the ultimate testament to this lost science. The architect who designed it knew the precise dimensions of our planet. They knew the length of the polar radius, the eccentricity of the Earth's axis, and the distance from the Earth to the Sun. They understood the phenomenon of the precession of the equinoxes and calculated the exact duration of the sidereal year. They even knew the weight and density of the terrestrial globe. This level of knowledge is so far beyond the supposed capabilities of the era that historian Georges Barbarin concluded, "We can attribute the construction of the Great Pyramid to an unknown people, whose civilization was certainly not inferior to ours, if not superior to it." Abbot Moreau takes this idea even further, stating, "The still unsolved problem of the origin of the people who built this Great Pyramid is confused with the problem of the origin of human civilization. The purpose of the pyramids, both in the Americas and in Egypt, seems to have been twofold. They were receptacles for the illustrious dead, but they were also meant to be libraries of stone, designed to preserve the whole of scientific knowledge for future generations. When the day comes that these wonderful edifices reveal all their mysteries," Moreau believed, "we will finally know precisely where Atlantis was located, and the true story of our own beginnings will be rewritten." While many theories place Atlantis in the vast expanse of the Atlantic, one of the most scientifically respected hypotheses brings the search much closer to home. In the spring of 1900, British archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans made a groundbreaking discovery on the island of Crete. He unearthed the sprawling palace of the legendary King Minos in Knossos, revealing the heart of a sophisticated and powerful Bronze Age civilization, the Minoans. This discovery gave birth to a compelling new theory about Atlantis. On February 19, 1909, Professor K.T. Frost of Belfast published an article in The Times, proposing that the story of Atlantis was actually a distorted memory of the great Minoan civilization and its sudden, catastrophic collapse. The parallels between Plato's description of Atlantis and the reality of Minoan Crete are striking. The Minoans were a dominant naval power in the Mediterranean, much like the Atlanteans were in the Atlantic. Their civilization was known for its stunning art, advanced architecture, and widespread trade networks. Then, around 1500 BC, at the peak of its power, the Minoan civilization vanished almost overnight. As Professor Frost noted, Knossos died out at a time when it seemed very powerful and safe from any danger. The suddenness of this collapse seemed to perfectly mirror Plato's account of Atlantis being swallowed by the sea in a single day and night, making it a prime candidate for the real-life inspiration behind the legend. This hypothesis was significantly strengthened by the work of Greek archaeologist Spyridon Marinatos in the 1930s. Excavating near the ancient Cretan port of Amnisos, Marinatos discovered a villa where massive stone slabs had been violently thrown from their foundations. The scene suggested the entire area had been swept away by an immense tsunami. Marinatos proposed that the destruction of Knossos and the entire Minoan Empire was the direct result of a volcanic eruption of almost unimaginable intensity. He identified the source of this cataclysm as the volcanic island of Thera, now known as Santorini, located just 120 kilometers north of Crete. This eruption, one of the largest in human history, would have triggered devastating earthquakes and tsunamis across the Aegean. Professor J.V. Luce became a strong advocate for this Crete as Atlantis theory. He suggested that Minoan nobles who survived the disaster fled to Egypt. There they told their harrowing story to the Egyptian priests who recorded it for posterity. 900 years later in 590 BC, these same priests would have recounted the tale to the Athenian statesman Solon. Luce even offered an explanation for the name Atlantis. He argued that Solon, hearing the story of an island kingdom destroyed by the sea, connected it to the Greek myth of Atlas, the Titan who held up the sky. Thus, Keftiu, the Egyptian name for Crete, was translated as Atlantis, or the island of Atlas, not because it was in the Atlantic, but because of its mythological association. A far more revolutionary theory moves the search for Atlantis from the warm Mediterranean to the cold waters of northern Europe. This idea belongs to the German pastor Jürgen Spanuth, who argued that Atlantis was the heart of an ancient Nordic civilization. Spanuth dismissed Plato's account as pure fiction in its details, particularly the timeline. He found it impossible to believe that a city like Athens could have existed 9,000 years before Solon, or that Bronze Age armies used iron weapons. Instead, he proposed that Plato had misplaced a decimal point, and the cataclysm that destroyed Atlantis happened not 9,000 years before Solon, but 900. This would place the event squarely in the 12th century BC. To support his new timeline, Spanuth turned to ancient Egyptian records. He meticulously studied inscriptions from the temple of Pharaoh Ramses III at Medinet Habu. These texts describe a massive invasion of Egypt around 1200 BC by a coalition of aggressive seafaring tribes known as the Sea Peoples. Spanuth theorized that these Sea Peoples were in fact the displaced Atlanteans. He argued that a series of natural catastrophes in the 12th century BC forced them to abandon their northern homeland. They then embarked on a great migration across Europe and the Near East, a journey that culminated in their epic battle against Ramses III on the borders of Egypt. Spanuth's theory hinges on identifying the homeland of these Sea Peoples. He noted that Egyptian cosmology divided the known world into 10 segments or curves, corresponding to degrees of latitude. The inscriptions at Medinet Habu place the Sea Peoples in the 9th curve, which corresponds precisely to the region between 52 and 58 degrees north latitude. This area encompasses northern Germany, Denmark, and southern Scandinavia. The Egyptian artists even depicted these invaders with distinctive horned helmets and long, straight-handled swords. These specific items are archaeologically unique to northern Europe during the Bronze Age, around 1200 BC, providing a strong cultural and geographical link. The Egyptian texts name the main tribes among the Sea Peoples as the Feri, the Saksari, and the Danani. Spanuth saw these as the first historical mentions of the oldest Celto-Germanic tribes, the Frisians, the Saxons, and the Danes. He identified the lost Atlantean capital with the island of Heligoland in the North Sea, believing it to be the last remnant of a much larger territory now submerged. He pointed to Plato's mention of copper being extracted there, a claim supported by geologists who confirmed the existence of rich copper deposits in the region. For Spaneth, Atlantis was not a mythical island in the ocean but the powerful, real, and tragically lost center of a great Nordic empire. In his search for Plato's fabled city, Jürgen Spaneth looked for a material more valuable than gold orichalcum. He believed this mysterious substance was not a metal at all, but rather the famous Baltic amber. This fossilized tree resin, known for its golden yellow hue, was extracted from the ground in numerous locations in northern Europe. During the Bronze Age, amber was one of the most valuable commodities in the ancient world, prized more highly than gold. It was easily melted, and could be dissolved in oil to create a lustrous varnish. This yellow amber or orichalcos fit the description and value that Plato attributed to the unique resource of Atlantis, cementing the Nordic location in Spaneth's mind. The joyful and prosperous life of these northern peoples, which even Homer's Odysseus noted, came to a sudden and violent end. Spaneth links the destruction of this Nordic Atlantis to a global catastrophe triggered by the close passage of a massive comet. He finds evidence for this event encoded in Greek mythology, specifically in the myth of Phaeton. In the legend, Phaeton, the son of the sun god Helios, loses control of the solar chariot, which then plummets to Earth. The chariot crashes at the mouth of the Eridanos River, which Spaneth identifies as the Eider River in modern Germany. This myth of a celestial body falling from the sky and causing immense destruction perfectly matched his theory of a comet-induced cataclysm. This story of cosmic destruction is not unique to Greek myth. Spaneth found powerful parallels in the Scandinavian Eddas, the foundational texts of Norse mythology. These poems recall the destruction of Asgard, the abode of the gods, following the collapse of the cosmic wolf Fenrir at the mouth of a great river. The imagery of a world consumed by fire and flood, triggered by a celestial event, is a recurring theme. After their empire was shattered, the northern Aryans, whom Spaneth firmly believed were the Atlanteans, were forced to flee the famine and devastation. They became refugees, taking the well-established trade routes south in search of new lands to conquer and settle. Their migration became a military campaign. Some headed for Greece, where they found cities like Mycenae and Tyre already weakened and destroyed by earthquakes. They met fierce resistance only at the Acropolis of Athens, which was defended by a massive wall. Here, the Athenians managed to hold back the tide of invaders, a feat of heroism that Spaneth believes is the historical basis for Plato's story of Athens defeating Atlantis. The larger portion of the Sea Peoples continued their journey, building a fleet to conquer the Peloponnese, Crete, and Cyprus, before pushing into Asia Minor and finally arriving at the borders of Egypt, exactly as the inscriptions at Medinet Habu describe. Convinced that the Egyptian inscriptions and Plato's narrative described the same 12th century BC event, Jürgen Spaneth took his theory from the library to, the real world. He was determined to find physical proof of his Nordic Atlantis. After I understood that the inscriptions at Medinet Habu corresponded in every way to Plato's account, he wrote, I decided, in 1933, to make my first underwater investigations. His target was a specific area in the North Sea, a place he believed held the submerged ruins of the Atlantean capital. He focused his search 9.2 kilometers east of the rocky island of Heligoland, in the shallow waters that were once dry land. The results of his underwater expeditions were, in his view, a complete vindication of his theory. Behind the main rocky massif of Heligoland, his divers discovered what he identified as the remains of a major settlement. They found the submerged remnants of precinct walls, and the ruins of what he claimed was the fortress of Basel, the royal capital of the Atlantean Empire mentioned by Plato. These discoveries led him to declare with confidence that he had found the lost city. He argued that northern Germany and southern Scandinavia were the center of a dominant and sophisticated culture that thrived until its sudden collapse in the middle of the 13th century BC. Spaneth's theory, while compelling in its synthesis of myth, text, and archaeology, has been met with significant skepticism from the mainstream academic community. His reinterpretation of Plato's timeline and his identification of orichalcum as amber are considered highly speculative. Critics point out that underwater rock formations can often be mistaken for man-made structures. The walls he discovered could simply be natural geological features. Despite the controversy, Spaneth's work highlights the importance of looking beyond the traditional locations and considering how distorted historical memories could have been woven into the fabric of mythology across different cultures. The debate over Spanath's findings underscores the central challenge in the search for Atlantis. Without a definitive, unambiguously man-made artifact found in a clear context, all theories remain in the realm of speculation. Whether Atlantis lies beneath the sands of Santorini, the waves of the North Sea, or the deep waters of the Atlantic Ocean, the quest continues. Each theory, from the Minoan connection to the Nordic Empire, adds another layer to the enduring mystery. The hunt for Atlantis is more than a search for a lost city. It is a search for a lost chapter in the story of human civilization, a chapter that continues to elude our grasp. When examining the more esoteric theories of Atlantis, we encounter the work of Edgar Cayce. Albert Einstein once remarked, "It happens that certain visionaries discover essential things long before scientists." This sentiment perfectly captures the strange and compelling nature of Cayce's contributions. Nicknamed the Sleeping Prophet, Cayce conducted thousands of psychic readings while in a hypnotic trance. Between 1924 and 1944, he produced approximately 2,500 texts that referred to Atlantis. These were not academic theories, but vivid chronicles of a lost world, which some view as profound truths, while others dismiss them as poorly argued fantasy. Cayce's work presents a unique and deeply influential chapter in the modern Atlantean saga. Central to Cayce's vision was the concept of reincarnation. He believed that many people living today are the reincarnated souls of those who once lived in Atlantis. This, he argued, is why our current era is marked by such rapid technological advancement and social upheaval. Based on reincarnation, it does not seem surprising to me that they act in the present, intervening in the lives of people and peoples, he stated. According to Cayce, the influence of these ancient Atlantean souls is overwhelming, shaping our modern world in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. The struggles and achievements of our time are, in his view, an echo of a drama that began millennia ago on a sunken continent. Cayce's timeline for Atlantis differs significantly from Plato's. He described its destruction not as a single event, but as a prolonged process involving three major cataclysms. The first of these occurred between 50,000 and 28,000 BC, when the great continent was shattered into a series of smaller islands. The final, total destruction, which inspired Plato's account, took place around 10,000 BC. In a 1932 reading, Cayce pinpointed the location of the lost continent between the Gulf of Mexico and the Mediterranean. He claimed that tangible evidence of its existence could be found in places like the Pyrenees, Morocco, and the Yucatan, and that the Bahamas are, in fact, the exposed mountain peaks of this sunken landmass. He famously predicted that if geological surveys were conducted near the island of Bimini, in the Bahamas, decisive proof of Atlantis would be discovered. This specific prediction would later inspire searches that led to the discovery of the Bimini Road, a submerged rock formation that some believe to be a man-made wall or pier from the Atlantean age. Cayce's visions provided a detailed geography for the lost world, claiming that the survivors of its destruction fled to Europe, Central and South America, and most notably, Egypt. This migration of advanced peoples, he argued, explains the sudden and mysterious rise of these great ancient civilizations, seeding them with Atlantean knowledge. In his trance readings, Edgar Cayce painted a detailed picture of life in Atlantis. It was a world populated by beings of various stages of development. On the lowest level were what he called things or automatons, monstrous hybrids of human and animal, such as centaurs and nymphs, who served as a submissive labor force. Above them were giants and dwarfs, considered failed forms of the human species. At the top was the red race, the ideal human, perfectly adapted to their environment and possessing incredible intuitive and psychic abilities. These true Atlanteans were masters of their world, exploiting the resources of their land with a technology that rivals our own, creating flying machines and submersibles. Initially, the Atlanteans were a deeply spiritual people. They believed in a divine creator, the existence of the soul, and their own occult powers. At the heart of their spiritual life was the Great Crystal, or Tuaoi Stone. Cayce described this as a powerful white stone, protected by a high priestess, which served as a generator of immense energy and a tool for communicating with the universal consciousness. This crystal was the source of their power, used for healing, energy, and industry. However, over time, a spiritual decay set in. The Atlanteans forgot their divine essence, focusing instead on material gain and worldly pleasures, leading to a great schism in their society. This conflict divided the people into two opposing factions, the Sons of the One Law and the Sons of Belial. The Sons of the One Law were the spiritualists, who honored a single God and believed in reincarnation for the soul's evolution. They fought against the injustices of their society, particularly the enslavement of the things, and saw a purely technological progress as a corrupting force. The Sons of Belial, in contrast, were the materialists. They were the masters of the hybrid things, whom they controlled through hypnosis and telepathy. Arrogant, power-hungry, and without a moral compass, they pursued pleasure and profit above all else. The struggle between these two groups escalated into a devastating conflict. The Sons of Belial, according to Casey, harnessed the power of the Great Crystal for warfare, creating destructive technologies akin to laser beams and atomic energy. In the year 50,722 BC, they used this power to destroy the giant dangerous animals that roamed the land. However, their weapon backfired, triggering a cataclysm far greater than they intended. This first great disaster caused earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and even a shift of the Earth's poles. It was the beginning of the end for Atlantis, a civilization torn apart not just by geological forces but by its own internal struggle between spirit and machine. The story of Atlantis is a powerful tapestry, woven from ancient philosophy, global myths, and modern investigation. It began with Plato's tale of a magnificent island kingdom, a cautionary moral fable of a civilization that fell from grace. For 2,000 years, it remained just that, a story. Yet the legend refused to fade, re-emerging in our time as one of history's most compelling unsolved mysteries. The quest to find this lost world has taken us from the sun-baked ruins of Crete to the cold depths of the North Sea, and from the controversial stone library of Ica to the psychic visions of a sleeping prophet. Each theory offers a tantalizing piece of a puzzle that may never be fully assembled, a different lens through which to view our own distant past. What is the ultimate legacy of Atlantis? Perhaps it is not about finding a physical place, a sunken continent marked on a map. The true significance may lie in what the search itself reveals about humanity. It speaks to our innate desire to understand our origins, to believe that we are heirs to something greater than we know. The incredible parallels in myths and architecture across ancient Egypt, the Americas, and beyond suggest a shared cultural memory. Whether this memory comes from a single lost civilization or from a universal human experience of cataclysm and rebirth, the connection is undeniable. It forces us to question the neat, linear progression of history we have been taught. The figures who have chased this legend, from dedicated archaeologists like Marinados to controversial visionaries like Casey, all share a common drive. They are seekers of lost knowledge, unwilling to accept that great civilizations could simply arise from nothing. They see the pyramids, the advanced astronomical knowledge, and the global flood myths not as isolated curiosities but as echoes of a forgotten source. They challenge us to keep an open mind, to consider that our ancestors may have been far more advanced than we imagine. The story of Atlantis is a testament to the idea that there are still profound secrets buried in our past, waiting for the right key to unlock them. Ultimately, the quest for Atlantis is a quest for ourselves. It is a grand expedition into the heart of human imagination, history, and our enduring hope for discovery. The legend persists because it embodies the ultimate mystery, a chapter of our own story that has been torn out. It reminds us that the world is still full of wonder, that not all questions have been answered, and that the greatest discoveries may still lie hidden beneath the waves or buried in the sand. Whether Atlantis was a real place of gold and orichalcum, or a powerful idea that reflects our deepest aspirations, its power to inspire us to explore, to question, and to dream remains as strong as ever.